If I hadn't opened that door, I never would have known my own heart was about to fail. Not metaphorically, literally. It was a Thursday, one of those gray Seattle mornings where even the coffee shops looked tired. Rain tapped against the sidewalk like it had secrets to keep. I was trying to outrun all of them, late to a cardiology appointment I'd already tried to cancel twice. My name is Juliette Carter. I was 28. At the time, I was juggling an executive role at a downtown tech firm, prepping for a high-stakes product launch, squeezing in therapy, a standing Sunday brunch with my best friend Lucy, and the occasional hot yoga class I pretended helped my anxiety. I wasn't prepared for a full-body betrayal, and definitely not for a diagnosis that would upend everything I believed about control and effort and loyalty. "You're early," the receptionist chirped as I rushed in, rain sliding from my coat sleeves. I wasn't early, I was 10 minutes late, but I nodded, breathless, and filled out the clipboard anyway. The appointment had been Lucy's idea. She's a trauma nurse. She notices things. For weeks she watched me struggle to climb stairs I used to jog. She saw me grip the counter during meetings when I thought no one was looking. She booked the appointment behind my back, emailed me the details, and threatened to fake a medical emergency if I didn't show up. As I sat across from Dr. Elijah Myers, watching him study the screen in silence, I tried to joke. I thought we were just ruling things out. He didn't laugh. He looked at me like I'd walked in with a bomb ticking in my chest. "Juliette," he said, voice calm but certain, "you have a congenital heart defect that's gone undetected until now. We need to operate, soon." I blinked. I don't have a history of heart problems. "You do now." Time didn't slow down. It tightened, like a fist around my ribcage. The overhead lights buzzed. The chair beneath me scratched at my skin. The taste of lukewarm coffee turned metallic in my mouth. My hands were shaking and I didn't know when they'd started. "What happens if we don't?" I asked, though I already knew the answer mattered more than anything else in my life. "You won't make it through the year," he said. "Possibly not the summer." I felt myself split. One half screamed this couldn't be happening. The other, quieter, colder, started making lists. Appointments, insurance, time off work. Who do I tell? Who do I ask for help? Somewhere in the fog, I remembered a moment from childhood. Claire and I in our pajamas, building a pillow fort under Grandma's dining table. She pretended to be the nurse while I was the brave patient, bandaged in dish towels. "I'll never leave you alone," she whispered then. We were 9. "I have an OR opening," Dr. Myers said gently. "June 10th. It's early but gives us the best odds. I'd like to book it." My heart didn't just sink, it twisted. June 10th? Claire's wedding? My sister, the golden one. The Instagram perfect one. She was getting married in Lake Como, in a villa with a view so scenic it looked photoshopped. A full week of white-glove dinners, wine tastings, and a dress from Paris that cost more than my car. I'd gotten weekly updates I hadn't asked for, song lists, flower arrangements, screenshots of RSVP excitement from people I hadn't seen since high school. And now, June 10th wasn't just her wedding day. It was the day I might live or die. I nodded. "Book it," I said quietly. It was the only thing that felt solid. Outside, the sky had darkened into a shade somewhere between bruised and grieving. I stood on the hospital steps, coat unbuttoned, rain soaking my collar. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have the words yet. But I had to call them. That night, I curled up on the couch in my softest hoodie, the one with frayed cuffs, and held my phone like it might break me before the diagnosis did. The TV played muted reruns. My knees were drawn to my chest. I rehearsed. Mom, I need surgery. Dad, I might die. Please come. My fingers trembled as I dialed. My father answered on the third ring. Jules, perfect timing. We were just talking about risotto options for the wedding menu. Claire's not sure about the truffle oil. Dad, I said, cutting him off, heart pounding, can you put me on speaker? A pause. Sure. Hang on. There was muffled movement, a click. Hi, sweetie, my mom said, cheerful. Is everything okay? Number. I need to tell you something, I said. And I did. I told them about the dizziness, the scans, the surgery, the risk, the doctor's words, the date. I kept my voice steady until I couldn't. There was a long silence. Then, Juliette, my mom whispered. Oh my God. My dad asked questions, procedure name, prognosis, the surgeon's experience. She cried. For the first time in a long time, I thought maybe they saw me not as the daughter who always handled things, but as someone fragile, someone needing care. We're coming home, Mom said. Right away. We'll call Claire. She'll understand. Of course we'll cancel. You come first. My chest eased just slightly. I let myself believe it. I let myself believe them. I let those 3 days fool me. When my parents promised they'd cancel everything, flights, florals, 5-course dinners, I let myself believe it. Nothing comes before your health, my mother had said, voice trembling. My father agreed right away, swearing he'd talk to Claire that night. Their promises felt like a blanket over something I didn't want to look at. For the first time in years, I thought maybe I was the daughter they'd show up for. Lucy came over the next day, efficient as ever. She brought a binder labeled Juliette's Survival Plan. She reorganized my kitchen, stocked the freezer, even dragged a bulky recliner into my living room. It's hideous, she said, Lysol in hand, but your sternum will thank me. We circled June 10th in red on the calendar, surgery day. Then came Sunday, and the email. Subject line, family wedding check-in. A Zoom invite, group link, no explanation. At first I thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't. Lucy looked up from the table. You want me to sit in? I shook my head. I need to know what they say when they think I'm alone. I logged in. Claire's camera was already on. She sat in a bridal suite, perfect lighting, champagne flutes, matching robes in the background. Her sash read bride mode. Everything about the frame was curated. A few seconds later, my parents appeared on screen, sitting on a balcony in Florence. Skyline glowing behind them. My mother wore the silk scarf she'd bought for the rehearsal dinner. My father smiled like nothing in the world had changed. I was in flannel, hair damp, eyes hollow. The only light in my apartment came from a floor lamp missing its shade. Hi, sweetheart, Mom chirped. You look tired. Are you getting rest? I didn't answer that. Just, hi. And then I waited. Dad spoke first. We've been thinking a lot about how to support you, he said, and we've come up with a plan that balances everything. I said nothing. We talked to Aunt Cynthia, Mom added. She's flying to Seattle on the 8th. She'll stay with you during the procedure, help you recover, and make sure you're not alone. And we'll be in contact the whole time, Dad said. FaceTime, calls, whatever you need, and we'll fly home after the wedding ends. I blinked. You're still going? Claire stepped in then, glass in hand, voice tight. Jules, people are flying in from 3 continents, Germany, Australia, Canada. You expect us to cancel? No, I said. I expected my parents to choose me. And we are, Mom said. We're just not there physically. It's open-heart surgery. You don't get to support that from a wine tasting. Dad leaned forward. It's a common operation. You said it yourself. The odds are excellent. Unless it's delayed, I said. Every week adds risk. Mom smiled too tightly. Juliette, please don't be dramatic. That was it. The first crack. The quiet betrayal that would echo louder than any scream. I'm not being dramatic, I said. I'm being clear. I need you here. Claire scoffed. Cynthia is basically family. You'll be fine. It's outpatient, right? I'm being cut open, I said. They are stopping my heart. If something happens, I wake up to no one but a stranger in scrubs. Dad looked away. Mom lowered her voice. This isn't the time for emotional manipulation. I almost logged off, but I needed to hear them say it, out loud. So, I said, you're choosing Claire. That's not fair, Dad said, stiff. We're trying to balance everything. And I'm not part of that equation? You're our daughter, Mom said, but so is she. Exactly. And only one of us ever gets chosen. No one answered. I clicked the red button, closed the laptop, and sat in silence. The rain had started again, tapping the windows like it knew better than to expect a response. Lucy came in from the kitchen and sat next to me. I leaned my head on her shoulder. She said nothing. Sometimes, silence is the only way to hold grief without dropping it. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. We love you. We'll call tomorrow. Try to rest. I stared at it for a long moment, then muted her number. The next morning, Claire posted a photo, her feet in satin heels, standing on a cobblestone street. Caption, final countdown begins. I turned off my phone. Not in rage, in self-defense. I wasn't surprised anymore. I was just done. The morning of my surgery was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that soothes you, the kind that buzzes under your skin, like something's missing, like something's unfinished. Seattle's sky was overcast as usual, but even the rain hadn't shown up that day. It was just me, Lucy, and the thudding of my heart reminding me why we were doing this in the first place. We left the apartment at 6:10 a.m. Lucy drove. She didn't speak much, just reached over and turned off the radio when she noticed my hands shaking in my lap. She didn't try to fill the space with reassurance. That's one of the many reasons I trusted her. She never said things she didn't mean. At a red light, she looked over. You ready? I turned to her and tried to smile. But I'm here. When we pulled up to Seattle Memorial, a nurse was already waiting with a wheelchair. I'd insisted I could walk, but protocol said otherwise. Lucy stayed with me through the check-in. She held my hand when the IV went in. She helped me laugh when the nurse couldn't pronounce the name of my congenital condition. She only let go when they took me through the double doors. As the anesthesiologist counted backward from 10, I remember thinking, if I don't wake up, this is it. This is how it ends. Not with fanfare or family or goodbyes, just me, in a room of strangers, trusting that they'll put my heart back together after stopping it. I woke up to a blurry ceiling and the sound of a monitor beeping somewhere behind me. Pain hit first, then confusion, and then Lucy's face, hovering over me like sunlight cracking through clouds. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes were puffy, like she hadn't slept. "Hey," she whispered. "You're here." I couldn't speak. My throat burned from the breathing tube, but I blinked twice. She smiled. "You did great." The next few hours were fog and fire. Nurses moved in and out of the room. Someone checked my vitals. Someone else adjusted my oxygen. I drifted in and out of sleep, my body heavy and uncooperative. Every cough felt like a stab through my chest. Aunt Cynthia visited the next day. She brought a bag of lemon tea, a crossword puzzle book, and a casserole I couldn't eat for weeks. She stayed exactly 42 minutes, checked her watch 4 times. "I wish I could do more, honey," she said, placing the tea gently on the tray table. "But my cruise leaves Thursday. Been planning it for months. I think Alaska will be good for my joints." I didn't blame her. She never promised anything. The ones who promise are the ones who hurt you when they don't show up. Lucy handled everything: appointments, prescriptions, sponge baths. She slept on a fold-out chair in my hospital room the first 2 nights. When I got discharged, she helped me up the stairs, one painful step at a time. My apartment had never felt smaller or quieter. My parents didn't call the day of the surgery. They texted. Once. "Thinking of you?" Claire didn't text at all. The only wedding photo I saw was posted by someone else. Claire in her designer gown standing on a balcony, a spray of white roses framing the sea behind her. My parents were in the background, mid-laugh, holding champagne. It looked like a postcard. It looked like none of them had thought about me in days. The silence afterward was almost louder than the betrayal. 1 week into recovery, I woke up in a panic. My chest burned. My breath came too fast. Lucy rushed in from the kitchen, knelt beside the bed, and held my hand until the wave passed. "It's just fear," she said gently. "It's not failure." I nodded. I believed her. But the line between the two felt thinner than it ever had before. My phone remained quiet. My inbox, full of promotions and automatic reminders. The people who'd said they'd check in never did. The people who'd claimed to love me didn't know which day I had my stitches removed, or that I cried in the shower the first time I saw the scar. They weren't there for the fever on day 6, or the medication that made me vomit until my chest ached, or the night I stood at my balcony window, wondering what it would feel like to disappear completely. They weren't there, but Lucy was. So I wrote her a note one night when I couldn't sleep, folded it and left it on the counter next to her coffee mug. It said, "Thank you for being the only one who stayed when things got ugly. I don't know how to repay that kind of love, but I'll never forget it." She didn't bring it up, but the next morning I found a post-it on the fridge. "You already have." 2 weeks later, my cardiologist said I was healing beautifully. "You're strong," he said, his tone both clinical and kind. "I can see that in your chart, and in how you showed up for yourself." I nodded. I didn't tell him the truth. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow, like someone had emptied me out and filled me with silence, not just from the surgery, but from every unanswered message, every absence that left its mark. What I was learning, slowly, was that recovery isn't just physical. Sometimes the hardest healing is emotional. It was a Thursday morning, 12 days after my surgery, when the phone finally rang. Not a text, not a group message, not a wedding photo accidentally sent my way, an actual call from my father. The screen lit up with his name. D.A.D. Work cell. I stared at it for 3 full rings, heart suddenly louder in my chest. My thumb hovered over the green icon. Lucy looked up from the couch. "You going to answer?" I didn't know. I didn't know if I wanted to hear a voice that had been absent when I needed it most, but I was tired of silence, tired of pretending their absence hadn't carved out something inside me. I answered. His voice came through the line, warm and steady. "Jules, how are you feeling, sweetheart?" It was the first time he'd called me that in weeks. I could have answered 100 ways, could have told him about the stitches, the pain, the insomnia, the scar, the post-it Lucy had written me that made me cry harder than the anesthesia ever had. Instead, I said, "I'm recovering." A pause. Then, "That's good. That's real good. Your mom and I have been worried sick." I let the silence sit. I wanted him to hear the absurdity of that statement echo back. He filled the space. "Claire's wedding went beautifully, but it just wasn't the same without you there. She missed you." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Did she?" "She did," he said too quickly. "You know weddings, a lot going on, but she said your name during the toast." That stung more than I expected, like saying my name during a party erased not showing up during my surgery. I pictured Claire in her gown, glass raised, thanking the guests who had flown across oceans, and somewhere, tucked between lines about sisterhood and fate, my name dropped in like a comma, a quick nod, a forgotten footnote. "Is Mom there?" I asked. "She's upstairs. You want me to get her?" "No." My answer came too fast. I softened. "Not yet." "Okay," he said, as if he understood. I didn't believe he did. There was another pause. Then he shifted, his voice quieter. "We were thinking maybe we'd come visit, now that the dust has settled, just for a few days." I blinked. "Now?" "We thought you could use some support while you recover." I laughed. It wasn't kind. I'm almost 2 weeks post-op. The part where I needed support came and went. "Jules, don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I'm just healing. Alone." He sighed. "Don't say that. Cynthia came. We made sure someone was there." "Cynthia came for 42 minutes, then she left for a cruise." "That's not fair." "No," I said softly. "It's not." For a long moment there was nothing. Then he whispered, "We thought you'd be okay. You've always been the strong one." That's what broke me. That sentence, that excuse wrapped in a compliment. "I was strong because I had to be," I said, "because no one else ever made space for me to fall apart." He didn't respond. I went on. "You didn't come. You went to Florence. You smiled in pictures and danced at a villa while I laid in a hospital bed wondering if I'd wake up. We didn't think it was that serious." They stopped my heart. "I know," he said. "I know. And we were wrong. We should have been there." There it was. The apology I hadn't realized I needed. It didn't fix anything, but it didn't fall flat either. I closed my eyes. "You can come," I said, "but don't bring flowers, don't bring gifts, don't pretend this didn't happen." He was quiet. Then, "Okay." We hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. Just a soft ache, like pressing a bruise. That night, Lucy made soup and played old episodes of Jeopardy while I rested. I told her they were coming. She raised an eyebrow but didn't say much. "You sure you want that?" she asked gently. I nodded. "I want to know how they'll look me in the eye." When the doorbell rang 3 days later, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. My mother came in first. She looked thinner, or maybe just more tired. She was holding a pie. I said nothing. She placed it on the counter without a word. My dad followed. He looked at my recliner, at the soft throw blanket, at the tea bags stacked in the kitchen corner. His eyes found the scar just above my collarbone and didn't look away. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. "You look better than I expected." That made me smile, small, bitter, honest. "Pain makes you stylish," I said. They sat awkwardly on the couch. My mom folded her hands. "We missed you." I didn't say I missed them, because I hadn't. What I missed was who I thought they were. The call came on a Wednesday. I was halfway through reheating a bowl of soup Lucy had dropped off when my phone lit up with Claire's name. I stared at it longer than I should have. It was the first time I'd seen her name on my screen since before the surgery. Not even a text. Not even one of those vague, thinking of you emojis that meant nothing and took less effort. I let it ring twice. Then I picked up. Her voice was cautious. "Jules?" I didn't respond right away. I was waiting for something, maybe guilt to arrive in her tone, maybe shame. It didn't. "I saw Lucy's post," she continued. "You looked better." I sat down at the kitchen table, the bowl of soup forgotten. "What do you want, Claire?" "I wanted to check in." "You're a little late." "I know," she said softly. "I know I am." There was a long pause. I could hear something in the background on her end, wind maybe, or the faint click of her car's turn signal. Wherever she was moving. I wasn't. "I should have called earlier," she said. "You should have shown up earlier." "I thought you'd be fine," she replied, a little too fast. "You're always fine. You've always been the strong one." "That's not a compliment anymore," I said. "That's an excuse." She sighed. I was scared. Of what? That I might not make it? Or that you'd have to miss your hair appointment? "That I wouldn't know what to do if you didn't survive," she said. "That I'd be stuck in Italy while everything fell apart back here." "You weren't stuck," I said. "You chose to be there, and you chose not to be here." Another silence. Then she said, "I wanted to have something that was just mine, something beautiful. I didn't want my wedding day to be about hospitals or sickness or me," I finished for her. "Yes," she admitted. "I'm sorry." It landed heavy, not because it fixed anything, but because it was the first time I'd heard her say it, directly, plainly, without a veil of justification. "I needed you," I said, my voice low, "and you weren't there, not for the surgery, not for the nights I couldn't sleep, not for the fevers or the vomiting or the nights Lucy sat beside my bed when no one else called." "I can't undo that," she said, "but I want to make it right. I want us to talk, to rebuild something." "You want forgiveness." "I want my sister." "You had your sister," I said. "But when I needed mine, she was busy taking sunset photos in Tuscany." She went quiet again. "I know I failed you," she whispered, "but I'm here now, and I'll wait. You can be angry, you can ignore me, but I won't stop trying." I closed my eyes. The ache in my chest had nothing to do with surgery. "I don't hate you," I said slowly, "but I don't trust you either. You didn't just miss an event, you missed a crisis." "I know. You let me walk into the most terrifying moment of my life thinking I was alone." "You weren't," she said. "I thought about you every second." "But you weren't there," I replied, "and it wasn't your thoughts I needed." "I know," she said again. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not asking for that. But I wanted to call. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry, and I miss you." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. The clouds were thick, the sky heavy with rain that hadn't come yet. "I miss the version of you that didn't forget me," I said. "I want to find her again," she replied, "if you'll let me." I didn't answer right away. The air between us felt too fragile. I was still holding on to the sound of her silence from weeks ago, when I needed her most and heard nothing. "I need space," I said. "Don't text me every day. Don't send me flowers. Don't try to force this." "I won't. If this is real, if you really want to rebuild anything, it has to happen on my timeline, on my terms." "I understand." "Do you?" "Yes," she said, "and when you're ready, I'll be here." I sat there for a moment longer, listening to her breathe, then hung up. The soup was cold. My body still ached. But something in the air had shifted. Barely, but noticeably. I didn't know if I would ever trust Claire again, but for the first time in weeks, I believed she might finally be telling the truth. I found the gift on the hallway table a week after Claire's call. It hadn't been hidden. I just hadn't noticed it, hadn't wanted to. A square box wrapped in gold foil with a pale blue ribbon. No card, no note. But I didn't need one. The handwriting on the shipping label was my mother's, and the return address was still their house, the one I hadn't stepped foot in since my surgery. I stared at it for a while, debating whether to leave it sealed. Some things I'd learned were better left untouched, like apologies that arrived too late, like wounds that scar over but never fully close. Lucy noticed it later that afternoon. She picked it up, gave it a gentle shake, and raised an eyebrow. "They're still trying?" I nodded. "Apparently." "You going to open it?" "I don't know." She didn't push, just set it down and return to washing dishes. That was one of the things I loved about Lucy. She never demanded answers before I was ready to give them. That night, I sat alone in the living room. The recliner Lucy had bought still sat by the window, now draped with a throw blanket and a pile of books I'd barely touched. The house was still quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, but reflective. Everything I'd buried felt louder in that stillness. I picked up the gift. The ribbon slipped off easily. The paper made no noise as I tore it, just a slow unfolding. Inside was a square wooden box with a tiny clasp. I paused before opening it, afraid it might be something ridiculous, something performative. I wouldn't have survived a crystal angel or a faux spiritual mantra etched in glass. But it wasn't either. It was a photo frame, a simple one. Silver edges, slightly tarnished. Inside was a picture of Claire and me at the lake house when we were teenagers. Barefoot, sunburnt, arms slung over each other's shoulders like nothing in the world could break us apart. Behind us, a sandcastle half finished. I remember that summer. I remember how Claire had screamed when I dunked her in the water, how we stayed up late whispering about boys and the future and everything we thought we knew. There was a sticky note folded in half, tucked behind the photo. I hesitated again, then opened it. It said, "You were never supposed to carry everything alone. I'm sorry I let you." C. I held it for a long time, read it again. Then again. It wasn't enough, but it was something. That's the thing about unresolved forgiveness. It never arrives clean. It drips in slowly, like rain through a cracked ceiling, and even if you patch the leak, the stain stays. The next morning, I walked to the park. First time I'd walked that far since the surgery. The cold October air caught in my lungs and made my chest tighten. But I kept going, one step at a time. I sat on the bench overlooking the water and took out the photo frame I'd slipped into my bag. I thought about the version of us in that picture, so young, so sure we'd always be each other's person. I'd been that person for Claire her whole life. I'd dropped plans, defended her in fights, helped her pack her things every time she changed cities or boyfriends, and when it was finally my turn to need someone, she vanished. But maybe she wasn't pretending anymore. Maybe this wasn't performance. Maybe the silence between us wasn't empty. It was waiting. Later that day, I called her. She answered on the second ring. "Jules? You sent a photo." She paused. I hoped it wouldn't make things worse. It didn't. Silence. "I still don't know what to do with everything," I said. "The anger, the sadness, the space you left behind." "I'm not asking you to erase any of it," she said quietly. "I just want to be present now, if you'll let me." "I'm trying." "I know." We didn't say anything for a while. Just let the line hold us. Two voices, two scars, two sisters not pretending everything was fine. "I was going to send you earrings," she admitted, "for the gift, but it felt stupid." "Smart call," I said, and she laughed. A real laugh, not forced. "I still have the ring you gave me in high school," she said suddenly. "That plastic one with the fake ruby. I found it in my jewelry box last week. Made me cry." "Why?" "Because you were always the one giving. I just didn't see it until now." "That's not how sisters are supposed to work." "No," she said. "It's not." I didn't open up completely. I wasn't ready, but I didn't shut the door either. That was enough for one day. That night I placed the photo frame on my bookshelf, next to the candle Lucy gave me during recovery and a pressed flower from the bouquet Reed had brought when I was discharged. I didn't frame the note. I didn't need to. Some apologies don't need to be displayed, just read. Accepted and remembered. It was late Sunday morning when I heard the knock. Not a text, not a call. A knock, solid, deliberate, like someone who knew I might hesitate to answer. I opened the door to find Reed standing there, holding a paper bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon and something warm. He looked tired in that way doctors always do. Creased button-down shirt, slightly rumpled hair, eyes that had seen too much over too many shifts. But when he smiled, it was real. I brought muffins, he said, and a new kind of tea, supposedly good for your chest and tastes less like boiled grass. I stepped aside and let him in. Reed had been my cardiologist. Then, for a while, he was the person who sat beside my bed and explained things no one else wanted to say out loud. Somewhere between discharge instructions and post-op follow-ups, he became someone who asked how I slept, not just how my blood pressure was trending. We hadn't labeled whatever it was we were now, but he was the only person outside of Lucy who had seen me with a hospital gown, a heart monitor, and eyes too tired to pretend. "You didn't have to come," I said, accepting the tea as he handed it to me. "I didn't come because I had to," he replied. "I came because I wanted to." We sat in silence for a few minutes at the kitchen table. He sipped tea. I broke apart one of the muffins, blueberry, still warm, and picked at it while the air between us settled into something familiar. Outside, the wind pushed a cluster of red leaves across the sidewalk. Inside, it was just us, and the steady hum of my heart adjusting to being watched by someone who actually cared. "Your scar looks good," he said gently. "Healed well." I touched it without thinking. Still itches sometimes. "Scar tissue. That'll settle." We lapsed into silence again, but it wasn't awkward. Reed had this rare ability to let silence breathe without rushing to fill it. It made you feel like you didn't have to perform. You could just exist and still be worth someone's time. "I got a call from Claire," I said eventually. He nodded. "How did that go?" "She didn't defend herself. Not this time. That was new." "Progress?" "Maybe, I don't know yet. She said she wants to rebuild." "Do you believe her?" "I believe she wants to. I just don't know if I want to let her." He nodded again, sipping his tea like he was letting the words settle. Then he looked at me. "You don't owe her instant forgiveness. You don't owe anyone that." "I know, but I also don't want to live in this place where everyone is frozen in their worst moment, including me." Reed leaned forward slightly. "That's not where you live. You're healing. That's motion." I looked down at my hands. The skin around my fingers was dry, slightly cracked. Recovery made everything slower, even skin. It still feels like I'm catching up with the version of myself that existed before all of this. "You don't have to be her again." "I don't think I can be," I said. She trusted easily. She believed that family meant showing up, not just talking about love when it was convenient. That girl waited for her parents to walk through a hospital door that never opened. And the woman sitting in front of me? She stopped waiting. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think she's stronger for it." I blinked hard and looked away. That's the problem. Being strong is lonely. It doesn't have to be. When I met his eyes again, I saw something there I hadn't let myself look for before. Not sympathy, not professional obligation, something softer, something that stayed when the IVs came out and the heart monitors were packed away. I exhaled slowly. "You didn't have to come today, not on a Sunday, not after a shift." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to check in, not as your doctor." "As what then?" He paused. "As someone who's seen you at your worst, and still wants to be around for everything after." I didn't say anything, just nodded. It was the most I could offer without falling apart. He stood and reached for his coat. "I'll let you rest, but I'm around if you need anything." I walked him to the door. "Reed?" He turned. "Next time, bring coffee. Hospital-grade tea is traumatizing." He smiled, soft and crooked. "Noted." After he left, I stood at the door for a long moment, listening to the silence he'd left behind. It didn't feel like before. It didn't feel like abandonment or absence. It felt like something beginning. The invitation came on a Tuesday, folded neatly in my inbox like it belonged there. Subject line: dinner? The sender was Claire. The body of the message was short. "Just us. No pressure. Mom's cooking. Dad will be there. I hope you'll come. I miss you. See." I stared at it for 20 minutes before I responded with just one word. "Okay." The day of the dinner, I stood in front of my closet far longer than necessary. It shouldn't have mattered what I wore. This wasn't a reunion for the cameras or a birthday brunch with smiling Instagram posts. But it did matter. I wanted to look like I had healed, even if I hadn't. I chose a dark green sweater, soft at the sleeves, one of the few things I had bought for myself during recovery that didn't scream fragile, paired it with jeans and low boots. Simple, clean, present. The drive to my parents' house was exactly 13 minutes. I counted them like I used to count heartbeats after surgery. I pulled into the driveway just as the porch light clicked on, a faint hum of familiarity settling over me like a thin coat I didn't ask to wear. The house hadn't changed. Same white trim, same ivy trailing the side wall, same slightly crooked welcome mat that no one ever bothered to straighten. But the feeling in my chest wasn't the same. It twisted in the space between memory and grief, nostalgia and resistance. Claire opened the door before I even knocked. "You came," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. "You asked." She stepped aside. I walked in. The kitchen smelled like garlic and rosemary and something baking. My mother was at the stove, stirring with one hand and clutching a glass of wine with the other. My father sat at the end of the dining table, a newspaper folded beside his plate. "Hi," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Mom turned. "Oh, honey?" She stopped short. "You look, well." "I'm alive, so that's something." Dad stood up awkwardly. "Jules." "Hi." The air in the room shifted, not hostile, just uncertain. Dinner was set simply. No candles, no special plates, just a casserole dish in the middle, a bowl of salad, bread, like any other night. Except it wasn't, not even close. We sat. The clinking of silverware was the loudest sound for the first few minutes. Claire broke the silence. "I'm really glad you came." "I wasn't sure I would," I admitted. "I know." Mom passed the bread basket. "I made the chicken the way you used to like it." "Thanks." Dad cleared his throat. "How's recovery going?" "Still happening," I said. "But I'm okay. I'm working. I'm walking more." He nodded, like he didn't know what to do with that information. Claire poured water into my glass. "I've been thinking a lot about how we got here." "We didn't get here," I said carefully. "You left me here." Her shoulders sagged. "You're right." I looked up, surprised by how quickly she agreed. "I did leave you. I didn't know how to balance the wedding and the fear that something might happen to you, and instead of choosing, I avoided both." "That was a choice," I said quietly. "I know," she said again. Mom spoke next. "We failed you." I turned toward her. "You didn't just fail me, you prioritized a party over a surgery that could have gone either way." "We thought we had more time," she whispered. "No one ever has time," I replied. "That's the point of a crisis." Dad put down his fork. I didn't know what to say back then. Still don't. "Try," I said. He looked me in the eye. I was ashamed of how we handled it. I still am. I didn't expect that from him. He wasn't the admitting kind. Claire reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. She slid it across the table. I hesitated, then picked it up. It was a schedule, a list of dates and times. "I've been seeing someone," she said. "A therapist. This is my next month of sessions. I thought, I don't know, maybe you'd want to come to one, just once, with me." The paper trembled in my hands. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be," she said, "but I will be there, whether you show up or not." It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a fix. It was an offering. I tucked the paper into my purse. After dinner, I stood in the hallway, just outside the room that used to be mine. I didn't go in. I just stared at the door for a long moment, remembering the girl who used to lie on that bed and believe the world would always stop for her if she needed it to. That girl was gone. But the woman who stood there now, she wasn't weak. She wasn't bitter. She was building a new definition of family, one boundary at a time. Before I left, Claire hugged me. Not the kind of hug that expected something back, just a hug that said, "I'm still here." And for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, she meant it. The moment it finally happened, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. There was no music swelling in the background, no thunderstorm rolling in overhead. Just the soft click of my apartment door closing behind me and the weight of something I had carried too long finally sliding off my shoulders. I set my purse down. My keys landed with a soft clink. The lights were off, but I didn't turn them on. I didn't need light to know what room I was in. My body already remembered the way to the couch, the way the cushions curved to hold me like a second spine. That's where I sat. That's where I folded into myself. That's where it began. The crying wasn't graceful. It didn't start with a single tear gliding down my cheek like a movie still. It hit all at once, like a dam bursting from inside my ribcage. My chest convulsed, my throat tightened, and for a terrifying suspended second, I couldn't breathe. Then it came. Years of holding it together, of being the strong one, the overlooked one, the responsible one, the one who didn't cause problems, the one who didn't ask for too much, or complain too loudly, or fall apart where others could see. All of it broke. I cried for the night in the hospital when I realized no one was coming, for the voicemail Claire left that said, "I hope it goes okay. I really wish I could be there," with the sound of champagne popping in the background, for the nurse who held my hand like a stranger who cared more than blood, for the silence that came after the surgery, when even my own recovery felt like an inconvenience to the people who should have celebrated my survival. I cried for the version of me that waited by the door, on birthdays after dance recitals in that sterile hospital hallway, thinking maybe this time they'd remember, maybe this time I'd matter more. And I cried for the woman I had become, the one who had survived without them, who had built walls she didn't want, who had learned to smile through betrayal because what else do you do when the people who hurt you are the same ones who raised you? It was ugly and it was necessary. At some point I ended up on the floor, my cheek pressed against the rug, my sweater damp from tears, my breath shallow from exhaustion, and in that messy, undignified stillness, I felt something shift, not disappear, not resolve, but loosen. There was power in that. Letting yourself cry isn't weakness, it's permission. It's telling your nervous system, "I see you. You've been running too hard for too long. You can rest now." I don't know how long I lay there. Time moved like warm syrup, unmeasured and slow. But eventually, I peeled myself off the rug, walked to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. I didn't look in the mirror. I wasn't ready to see what all that honesty had done to my reflection. Instead, I changed into an old t-shirt, one with a faded high school logo and a hole near the hem, and climbed into bed. Not to sleep, but to be held by something that didn't expect anything from me. The sheets, the mattress, the stillness. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. I didn't check it right away. But after a few minutes, I reached for it. It was Reed. "Just checking in. No need to respond. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you." That was it. No pressure, no demands, just presence. I didn't write back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't have words yet. And for the first time, I trusted someone to understand that silence wasn't rejection. It was recovery. I closed my eyes and let the tears that hadn't finished fall again. Softer this time. Not a flood, but a tide. And when I finally slept, it was the first real sleep I'd had in months. It came on a Sunday afternoon. Not a phone call, not a letter, just a knock at the door. Soft, almost apologetic. The kind of knock that carried hesitation, as if the person on the other side was still debating whether they should have come at all. I hesitated too. My legs felt heavy walking toward the door. My hand paused on the knob. Through the peephole, I saw both of them, my parents, standing side by side like a united front. Only this time, they weren't dressed in confidence or convenience. They looked small, tired. Dad had his hands in his pockets. Mom's shoulders were hunched like she'd been rehearsing what to say for hours and still didn't know where to begin. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. They looked surprised to see me standing there so calmly. Maybe they expected yelling, maybe they expected tears, but all I gave them was stillness. "Hi, honey," Mom said first, her voice soft. I nodded. "What are you doing here?" Dad cleared his throat. "We wanted to talk, if that's okay." I stepped aside wordlessly. Let them walk in, not because I forgave them, but because some stories need to be finished, even when you already know the ending. They sat on the couch. I remained standing. "This isn't easy," Mom started. "Don't," I said. "Don't begin with how hard it is for you. You weren't the one alone in a hospital bed." She bit her lip and looked down. Dad reached for her hand. He always did that when things got uncomfortable. Like her discomfort needed shielding more than mine ever did. "We know we messed up," he said. "You have every right to be angry." "I'm not angry," I said. "Anger burned off a long time ago. What's left is just absence." Mom wiped at her eyes. "I thought I could make it up to you by being there now." "You think showing up late to my healing counts for something?" I asked, quieter than I meant to. Dad leaned forward. "We were wrong. About everything. About what mattered. About how we let the pressure of the wedding distract us." "You didn't let the pressure distract you," I corrected him. "You chose it. You chose Claire's perfect ceremony over your other daughter's survival." Silence. Then Mom finally said it. "I'm sorry." 2 words. So thin. So weightless. I waited for more, but she just stared at me like that should be enough. And maybe once, it would have been. Years ago, when I still craved her approval like oxygen. But now, all it did was float in the space between us and fall flat. "I needed you then," I said. "Not now. Not with flowers or casseroles or Hallmark-level regret. I needed you when the 4th bruised my arm. When the doctor said the risks were rising. When I went under and didn't know if I'd wake up." Her hands trembled. "I was scared." "I was dying," I said. "You don't get to compare." Dad stood. "What can we do now? Tell us." "You can't fix this like a home repair," I said. "This isn't drywall. It's my life, my trust, and it shattered." He sat back down. Mom tried again. "We were selfish." "You were," I agreed. "We thought we had more time," she whispered again. I nodded. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't happen in the big, obvious moments. It happens in the quiet ones. When you choose something else, every time you looked away, every time you didn't call, that was a betrayal. They said nothing, so I kept going. "When you sent me a wedding photo and said, 'Wish you were here,' while I was hooked to machines, that was betrayal. When I heard from the nurse that my emergency contact never picked up the phone, that was betrayal. When you posted on Facebook instead of showing up, do you know how loud that silence was?" Mom sobbed. Dad rubbed his forehead like it hurt to listen. "Good. It should. You want to show up now? Fine. But don't think I'll just hand over the pieces you dropped." "I don't expect that," she whispered. "I don't believe you." The room stayed silent for a long time after that, the kind of silence that stretches, not peacefully, but painfully, like a rubber band just before it snaps. Eventually, Dad stood. "We'll go." I didn't stop them. They walked to the door like people leaving a funeral. Maybe they were. Maybe they were grieving the version of me that used to say yes, forgive first, smile through pain. Before stepping outside, Mom turned back one last time. "I do love you," she said. I didn't answer. She left. And as the door clicked shut behind them, I realized something that hurt more than all the rest. That might have been the most honest thing she ever said, but it still wasn't enough. 3 days after my parents left, I found the letter in my mailbox. No postage stamp, no return address, just my name in a handwriting I hadn't seen in years. The ink looked like it had hesitated with every stroke, as if the pen had wrestled with guilt before forming each letter. At first I didn't want to open it. I held the envelope like it might burn through my fingers. I knew who it was from. Claire. The last time I'd heard from my sister, it was a group message. "Don't forget to RSVP for brunch the morning after the wedding." That text came 2 hours after I'd been wheeled out of post-op recovery. I stared at it then with a kind of numbness I couldn't explain. Now, holding her letter, that numbness shifted into something sharper. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened it. The first line made me scoff out loud. "I don't know if you'll read this, but I had to try." It wasn't guilt, not yet. Just defense. Still protecting herself in case I tossed the letter, but I kept reading. "I made a terrible choice, not just by choosing the wedding, but by staying quiet, by pretending your surgery wasn't as serious as it was, because it was easier for me to believe that than to face the truth, that I was being selfish." I exhaled through my nose. At least she didn't dress it up in excuses. I've been thinking about that day nonstop. I remember seeing Mom crying before the rehearsal dinner, and instead of asking why, I assumed it was just stress about table linens. She had your hospital number in her purse. She knew. And I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. There it was. The admission. I didn't want anything to ruin my big day. I closed my eyes. It hurt to read, not because it was a surprise, but because it was finally the truth. But the truth is, I ruined something far bigger. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't. But I need you to know that I think about you every single day. I looked around my apartment. The sunlight filtering through the blinds, the plants I'd nursed back to life, the stack of medical bills still on my side table. I wondered if she imagined this version of me, the one who kept going, the one who had learned to survive without the people who were supposed to hold her up. "Reed told me what happened when they came to your apartment. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad barely talks. And honestly, good. I hope they sit with it for a long time. They abandoned you. I enabled it. We all deserve the distance you've built." That part surprised me. But I also hope someday you'll let me sit with you again, even if it's in silence, even if you don't speak. I'll show up this time. I swear I will. She signed it with her full name, not Love Claire, just Claire Ellis. Like she didn't expect to be family anymore, like she knew she had to earn her way back. I folded the letter, pressed it against my chest, and just sat there. Not crying, not raging, just still. I didn't know if I could forgive her. Not yet. But something about the letter. It felt different. It wasn't performative. It wasn't a PR cleanup. It was raw, unpolished, real. And maybe that's what I had needed most all along. Not perfection, not promises, just realness. My phone buzzed. Another message from Reed. He'd been checking in like clockwork, never pushing, always patient. This one said, "Hey, no pressure. Just wondering if you want to grab coffee sometime. I'll bring your favorite." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Okay, tomorrow?" It was just one word, but for me, it was a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, that letter was too. It was a Sunday. The kind of crisp autumn morning where the sun cuts through red leaves and the air smells like cinnamon and firewood. Jenna was out back, raking little piles of leaves into what she called squirrel beds. I was sipping lukewarm coffee on the porch when I heard it. A knock, not loud, not urgent, just unsure. I opened the door, and there she was. Camille. She looked smaller. Not physically. Her posture had always been sharp, her clothes impeccable. But something was gone from her eyes. The armor, the smugness. All that was left was fatigue. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I stared at her for a long moment, then stepped aside. She sat at my kitchen table like it was a stranger's house. Hands folded, not touching the coffee I offered. She looked around like she couldn't quite believe she'd made it through the door. "I lost my license," she said after a pause. "The firm suspended me pending the ethics board. I had to move back in with Mom. Gavin's gone. He skipped town the day after sentencing. His accounts are frozen. Mine too." I stayed quiet. "I know I deserve worse," she whispered. I took a deep breath. "Why did you come here?" She looked up, and for the first time in a long time her eyes weren't defensive. They were grieving. Because I don't want Jenna to grow up thinking this is how sisters treat each other, because I miss you, and because I'm sorry. I was so angry at how easy you made everything look. You always had people who loved you without conditions. I didn't understand that, and instead of learning from it, I tried to destroy it. The kitchen ticked with the sound of the clock. She continued, I know I can't undo anything, but I'm trying to change. I go to therapy. I volunteered at a shelter. I even wrote letters to every client I misled. Not because I think it fixes anything, but because it's the first time I've felt like I'm telling the truth. I looked at her. Really looked. This wasn't manipulation, not the old Camille I used to brace against. This was someone standing in the ash of everything she'd burned down, asking for nothing but the chance to say she saw it now. I didn't say, I forgive you, but I poured her another cup of coffee. We sat in silence for a long while, and when Jenna came running in, cheeks flushed, leaves in her hair, Camille stood up and said, Hi Jenna, it's good to see you. Jenna blinked, then offered a small wave. It wasn't a reunion, but it was a beginning. 1 year later, I almost didn't recognize my life, but in the best way. The dining table was smaller, but it fit us perfectly. The walls were still hand-painted by Jenna and me, each one a story. The coffee wasn't fancy, but it was warm. And the mornings? They felt like hours again. It had been 12 months since that courtroom, 11 since Gavin left the state, 10 since Camille lost her bar license officially, and 3 since Jenna stopped asking if we'd ever have to go back to court. We didn't. My practice had expanded. I now worked with women navigating betrayal, grief, and identity reconstruction, because I had lived every layer of that myself. I didn't preach, I didn't quote cliches, I just listened, and I reminded them they weren't broken, just becoming. Camille wrote once, a letter, no return address. It was long, messy, beautiful in some parts, self-pitying in others. But I could tell she was doing the work. She had started therapy. She moved out of Mom's house. She was working part-time at a shelter while attending ethics training. I didn't respond. But I kept the letter. Because forgiveness doesn't always need a reunion. Sometimes it just needs a quiet acknowledgement. I see your effort. I release my need to carry the rest. Jenna was thriving. She was 9 now, fierce, funny, opinionated. She had a sticker collection, a new love of astronomy, and a best friend named Quinn who came over every Saturday. She no longer winced when someone mentioned her dad. She just nodded and said, "We don't talk much." I didn't push. Some wounds heal by silence, others by naming them. Jenna was learning the difference. One night, as we lay under a makeshift blanket fort in the living room, she whispered, "You know what I like most about our life now?" "What's that?" I asked. She looked up at the sheet glowing from the fairy lights we'd strung across the room. "It doesn't feel like something bad is waiting anymore. It just feels calm." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yeah, baby, me too." And maybe that's the best kind of ending. Not fireworks, not revenge, just peace. A peace we built ourselves, out of the wreckage. It was Reed who told me they wanted to come. He called one quiet Tuesday morning as I stood barefoot in the Hendersonville kitchen, slicing peaches over the sink. The air smelled like late spring and old wood, familiar, grounding. "They reached out," he said gently. "Your parents. Through me." I paused. Why not me directly? He didn't answer right away, but I could hear it in his silence. Because they were afraid I'd say no. Because even after everything, they still didn't know how to face me. "They said they'd like to visit the house," Reed added. "Just to talk. Just once." I leaned my hands against the counter, gripping the edge. The thought of them walking through these rooms made something knot in my stomach. This space had become my refuge, a symbol of something I hadn't thought I'd get back: dignity, choice, the A name on a deed that meant more than ownership. It meant recognition. I didn't answer right away. Reed waited. Finally I said, "They can come, but only once." And I set the rules. They arrived 3 days later. They came together, stepping out of their SUV like nothing had ever gone wrong, dressed too formally, like this was a performance. My mother in a pearl blouse and heels that clicked against the walkway. My father in a pressed shirt, his tie too tight for a casual visit. I met them at the front door and didn't offer hugs. We hadn't seen each other since the will reading. "Come in," I said, my voice calm but distant. They entered like tourists in a museum, looking around, not touching anything. I noticed my mother's eyes linger on the grand piano in the front room, the one my grandmother and I had played together on Sunday afternoons. Her expression was unreadable. We sat in the parlor. I didn't offer drinks. I didn't ask how they were. I let the silence stretch just long enough. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "We wanted to say thank you for letting us come." I nodded. "This is your only visit. Let's not waste it." My mother leaned forward slightly. "This house, it holds so many memories. Your grandmother loved it dearly." "Yes," I said. "She did." Another pause. Then my father, eyes finally meeting mine. "We didn't know she'd leave it to you." "That's obvious." His jaw tightened. "I meant, it wasn't about the house. It was about what came with it. Responsibility. Legacy." I raised an eyebrow. "And you didn't think I was worthy of either?" He looked like I'd slapped him. My mother stepped in, her voice softer. "That's not what he meant. We know we've hurt you, deeply. Claire's wedding, your surgery, everything. We made choices we can't take back." I stayed quiet. Let her words echo. "I've replayed it 100 times," she continued. "The phone call, you crying, us telling you it was bad timing, that Claire needed us more." I swallowed hard. I did need you. I needed my family, and instead, I was alone on the scariest day of my life. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. Not yet. "You looked beautiful in those wedding photos," I added flatly. "Smiling, dancing, while I was unconscious, hooked to monitors. I didn't even have flowers, just hospital light." My father bowed his head. "We made a mistake," he said finally. "A series of them." "You made a choice," I corrected. "And that choice had a cost." They both looked at me, unsure. "I'm not going to scream," I said, "or ask for explanations. I don't need your guilt. I'm not here to punish you. But I am finally living in a space where my name is on the front door, where I don't owe you grace just because we share DNA." Silence. Then my mother whispered, "Is there anything we can do to make this right?" I stood up, walked toward the fireplace where a single photo of my grandmother sat, a black and white portrait, her hands folded in her lap, eyes strong. "You can leave," I said. My father blinked. "Excuse me?" I turned, meeting his gaze evenly. "You came. You said what you needed, but you don't get to reclaim space in my life just because time passed. Healing doesn't mean invitation." My mother's lips parted, but she didn't speak. "This house is filled with the echo of people who showed up for me," I continued. "Grandma, Reed, myself, on my worst days. If I let you stay, it reopens a door I've worked hard to close." My voice didn't shake, and neither did my hands as I opened the front door behind them. They stood slowly. My mother hesitated. "I hope you find peace," I said, "but it won't be here." They left, and when I closed the door behind them, I felt it. Not anger, not sadness, but clarity, and that was more precious than any apology they could ever offer.